The command that shook the stars. The great hall of peace on the trade planet Zerine 5 was silent. Hundreds of alien leaders sat around a long table made of shimmering crystal. Their robes glittered. Their translators hummed softly. This was a historic moment. A peace treaty was about to be signed between the Ural Dominion and the Varnak Horde, two ancient enemies who had been at war for over a century. At the center of the room stood Kyalitha, a young diplomat from the planet. Rix. Her blue skin shimmered under the lights and her long silver hair flowed like water down her back. She was famous across many star systems. Some called her the voice of stars because she had stopped wars with her words alone. She smiled gently and raised her hand. "Let us end this war," she said in a calm, firm voice. "Today we become more than enemies. We become partners, in peace." The room burst into polite applause. A Ural warrior and a Varnak chieftain walked forward to place their marks on the treaty. Then it happened. A sharp buzzing sound echoed through the chamber. The air shimmered. A glowing blue portal opened in the center of the hall. Guards raised their weapons. Everyone stood, confused and afraid. Portals like this weren't allowed inside Federation buildings. From the portal stepped a tall figure. A human. He wore a dark uniform with no badges. His face was calm but cold, and his eyes scanned the room like a machine. His black boots made a heavy sound on the floor as he walked forward, ignoring the guards around him. Kyalitha blinked in confusion. "Who are you?" she asked. The human stopped in front of her. He pulled a metal card from his pocket. It flashed with a strange symbol, a seal never seen by the others in the room. He looked at her with no emotion and spoke clearly. "By order of the Galactic Federation, you are under arrest, Kyalitha of Rix." The entire hall gasped. Kyalitha froze. Her heart pounded in her chest. What do you mean?" she asked, trying to stay calm. "I have orders," the man said. "You are to be taken into custody. Immediately." The Ural warrior stepped forward. "This is a peaceful gathering. You have no authority here, human." The man turned his head. "I do." He tapped the metal card again. A hologram appeared, showing a high-level arrest order, signed by multiple Federation command units. It bore the rare red seal, Omega Protocol. Kyalitha's face turned pale. Only one kind of situation allowed Omega Protocol to be used, when someone was considered a threat to the stability of the entire galaxy. "But this must be a mistake," she whispered. The human said nothing. Two more humans stepped through the portal. They moved like shadows, dressed in the same dark armor, their faces hidden behind black visors. They surrounded Kyalitha. One of them held out special binding cuffs, made not of metal, but of glowing energy. "I am not a criminal," she said, her voice cracking. "I came to make peace." The first human finally looked into her eyes, just for a moment. Something flickered in his expression. Regret? Pity? It was hard to tell. "You will have a chance to speak," he said. "But not here." Kyalitha's guards tried to step forward, but the human agents moved faster than anyone had seen before. In seconds, the guards were disarmed and pushed aside, unharmed but stunned. "No violence," the lead agent said. "This is a clean extraction." Kyalitha raised her hand slowly. "I will come with you," she said, "but I demand to know what I've done." "Soon," the human replied. She was led toward the portal as the hall watched in silence. Nobody stopped them. Nobody dared. As she stepped through the glowing doorway, Kyalitha looked back one last time at the peace treaty lying on the table. It was still unsigned. Her heart sank. On the other side of the portal, she stepped into a cold gray corridor. Metal walls, dim lights. It was a stealth ship, human design. She had seen such ships in old war records. Silent, fast, deadly. The portal closed behind her. The lead human walked ahead without looking back. Kyalitha followed, surrounded by silent agents. The ship began to move. Inside her chest, a storm was growing. She wasn't just confused. She was afraid. And for the first time in her life, she had no idea what was going to happen next. the human who broke the system. The ship moved through deep space without a sound. No flashing lights, no Federation insignia, no name on its dark hull, just cold silence and speed. Inside, Kaelitha sat in a small chamber. The walls were smooth and gray, the lights dim, and the only sound was the hum of the ship's powerful engines. Her hands were free now, but the invisible weight of the situation kept her frozen in place. She didn't know where she was going. She didn't know why she was taken. And most of all, she didn't understand how a human had the power to arrest a high-ranking diplomat like her in the middle of a peace ceremony under the name of the Federation. Kaelitha had dealt with humans before. They were clever, bold, sometimes too emotional, but they were never this powerful. Earth was not a core Federation world. Its influence was growing, yes, but not enough to authorize an Omega Protocol arrest. That kind of authority came from deep within the system. Old Federation hands, council elders, secret departments that didn't even have public names. So how did this human, have access? She stood up and moved to the wall screen beside the door. It was locked, but her diplomatic implant gave her low-level access to any nearby systems. She reached out with her mind, tapping gently into the ship's outer networks, careful not to trigger alarms. To her surprise, the ship didn't fight her. The system welcomed her in like a ghost expecting company. What she found inside sent a cold wave through her body. The logs were old, some marked over 2 decades ago. There were missions, names, classified targets, and hidden locations across dozens of systems. But one thing stood out. The ship didn't belong to any known Federation fleet. Instead, it was tagged under an Earth-based intelligence division called Horizon Black. Kaelitha frowned. That name didn't exist in the public database, not even in restricted files, and yet here it was, burned into every log entry, mission file, and internal command. She pulled up a crew manifest. Only 4 names, all human. The captain's name matched the man who had arrested her. Riker Kane. No rank, no title. Just a note. Beside his name, Special Operations, Echo Class. Echo Class? She had heard of that during her academy days. Whispers, nothing more. A level of human operative so rare that even Federation Command didn't know how many existed, if they existed at all. She closed the files, feeling her skin grow colder. This wasn't a normal arrest. This was something else, something hidden, something dark. The door hissed open behind her. Riker Kane stepped inside. He didn't look angry or worried. He looked tired. His eyes were sharp, but there were lines around them, the kind that came from years of carrying heavy truths. You access the system, he said flatly. Kaelitha didn't lie. Yes, you didn't stop me. I wanted you to see it, he said. You needed to understand who you're dealing with. She turned to face him fully now. What is Horizon Black? Why am I here? Riker didn't answer right away. He stepped to a small console and tapped in a command. The lights dimmed. A hologram appeared between them. Flickering blue light forming a symbol, an old Federation seal, scratched and faded, overlaid with Earth's original flag. This is from 87 years ago, he said, back when Earth first made contact with the wider galaxy. The Federation didn't trust humans. They welcomed us, but they kept us under watch. Thought we were unstable, dangerous. Were they wrong? Kaelitha asked carefully. Riker gave a short, humorless smile. No, but we weren't the only ones. He changed the projection. A new file appeared, labeled Project Echo. It was locked. This, he said, is what you're connected to. Kaelitha narrowed her eyes. I've never heard of that. You were never meant to, Riker replied. It's buried so deep, even the Council doesn't talk about it. But you're part of it, Kaelitha. Your name showed up in a ghost file from 23 years ago. You were just a child then, but something links you to the cover-up. That's why you were marked. That's why I was sent. Kaelitha took a slow step forward. You mean, this isn't really an arrest? No, Riker said. It's a rescue and an interrogation, both at once. The room fell into silence. The engines continued to hum beneath their feet, the stars drifting slowly past the small window. Kyle-Etha's mind raced. Her past was clean. She had trained hard, worked for peace, served loyally. But now this, a secret mission, a dead project, her name in a file linked to something that could shake the galaxy. "You think I'm part of a conspiracy?" she asked. Riker looked at her, not as a soldier, but as someone who knew too much pain. "I think," he said, "that you're the key to something the Federation is desperate to keep buried, and I think they would kill you before letting the truth come out." Kyle-Etha's breath caught. She had been called many things: negotiator, diplomat, star child. But now she was something else, a target, and perhaps a weapon. Whispers in the ice sector. The ship glided through uncharted space, its dark hull almost invisible against the void. Kyle-Etha stood by the narrow observation window, watching the stars drift past in silence. The longer she stayed aboard, the more she realized how far she was from everything familiar. Her people, her station, her reputation. All that had been stripped away the moment Riker Kane stepped through the portal and arrested her without warning. But this was no simple arrest. She now understood that much. The human wasn't just a soldier or a spy. He was part of something buried deep in Earth's past, something the Federation itself seemed afraid to acknowledge. Horizon Black, Project Echo, Ghost Files. And somehow, she was tangled in it all. She turned as Riker entered the room. He carried a thin data pad and tossed it onto the small table. "We're dropping out of hyperspace," he said. "Prepare yourself. What you're about to see, no one has seen in nearly 40 years. Kyle-Etha's eyes narrowed. "Where are we going?" He looked at her with a serious expression. Ravel 9. A moon that was erased from the Federation's star charts after a climate collapse. But that was a cover. Something was buried there. A memory. A mistake. Moments later, the ship emerged from hyperspace. Before them lay a cold, white moon, circling a dead gas giant. The surface of Ravel 9 was covered in jagged ice fields and deep fissures that glowed with blue light. Strange clouds floated just above the surface, moving against the wind. It looked haunted. As the stealth cruiser descended, Kyle-Etha felt something strange, like a low hum in the back of her mind. The moon was silent, but not empty. The ship landed at the edge of a vast, frozen canyon. Riker led her out into the frigid air, where their breath turned to fog. He handed her a thermal mask. The cold stung like needles even through her protective gear. They walked across the cracked ice, flanked by two silent agents. In the distance, Kyle-Etha saw the ruins of a structure half buried in snow. Its walls were made of a strange, black stone, smooth, seamless, untouched by time. Riker approached a locked vault door built into the ground. He placed his hand on a small scanner, and the ground rumbled. With a hiss, the door opened. Inside was a hidden Federation data bunker, frozen in time. Lights flickered as backup power slowly returned. The walls were lined with old consoles, sealed, crates and dust-covered tablets. Kyle-Etha followed Riker down into the darkness. 43 years ago, Riker began, this place was used to run a secret experiment. The Federation wanted to create a weapon that would end future rebellions, without using bombs or armies. He wiped dust from a console and tapped in a code. A flickering screen came to life, revealing old video logs. They called it Project Echo. Their goal? Genetic memory transfer. They wanted to plant loyalty into unborn minds, make new generations, believe whatever they were told without question. Kyle-Etha stared at the screen. That's impossible. Riker looked at her. It almost worked. He showed her a file, one she couldn't take her eyes off. It showed an image of a Rix child barely 5 years old. Her name was hidden behind a redacted line. But the photo, it was her. Kyle-Etha stepped back, shaking her head. No, that's a mistake. I don't remember any of this. I was raised on a Lyra, not Ravel 9. Riker nodded. That's the point. They erased your memory, placed you in a safe family, gave you a new past. You were one of 12. 12 what? Subjects. The only survivors. Kyalitha could hardly breathe. Her legs felt weak. Her whole life she believed she had earned her place through diplomacy, wisdom, and service. But now, it felt like a story written for her by someone else. I don't believe you, she said quietly. Riker walked to a side terminal and activated a final file. This one was locked with Kyalitha's DNA. The screen scanned her. Unlocked. A voice spoke. Female. Rixian. Cold. Echo subject 07. Memory reset confirmed. Loyalty conditioning in place. Subject unaware of original protocols. Recommend placement within political stream for observation. Kyalitha fell silent. Her ears rang. Her whole body trembled. She had not been chosen for peace. She had been placed. It was never about who she was, but what she carried inside. Riker turned toward her slowly. You were supposed to be used as a tool, Kyalitha. But something changed. You resisted the programming. You became something real. And now they're afraid of what you might uncover. Why now? She asked, her voice hoarse. Because the last living scientist behind Project Echo just died, he said, and before she did, she sent a message with your name. You were never supposed to survive, but now that you have, you're the key to revealing everything. Outside the bunker, the wind began to rise. Suddenly, the base alarm blared. A signal was intercepted. Riker glanced at his wristpad. Federation forces. They found us. Kyalitha's eyes widened. How? They've been tracking you since the arrest. Someone wants you silenced before the truth gets out. He drew a pulse weapon and handed her a small data crystal. This contains everything. Take it, hide it. If I fall, you run. Do you understand? Kyalitha nodded, still stunned. But a new fire sparked behind her eyes. She wasn't a puppet anymore. She wasn't a pawn. She was going to find out who made her, and make them regret it. Secrets buried on Ravel 9. The warning sirens pulsed like a heartbeat inside the buried facility, echoing off the icy walls and making the metal floors tremble. Kyalitha clutched the small data crystal Riker had given her. It felt warm in her hand, alive with hidden truths. Truths so dangerous the Galactic Federation had erased a moon just to keep them buried. Outside, the wind howled across the surface of Ravel 9, and deep above them in the sky the shadows of incoming ships began to form. Federation warcruisers. Fast, silent, ruthless. Riker was already moving. His steps were sharp, focused. He didn't look back. He activated one final sequence on the console, which began the destruction of the bunker's deeper systems. If they couldn't carry the truth, they would bury it behind them again on their own terms. Follow me, he barked. Back tunnels, old mining shafts. They connect to the ridgeline. Kyalitha ran after him. The sound of her boots pounding against the frozen floor mixing with the distant rumble of approaching enemy fire. Her breath came in short gasps. Every few steps, flashes of her past flickered in her mind. Memories she thought were hers but now questioned. Were they planted? Or were they real? She had no time to find out. As they passed through a narrow shaft lined with broken cables and collapsed stone, Riker stopped and held up his hand. He pressed his ear to the wall. Dull thuds echoed through the ice. Someone was breaching from above. They're coming in from multiple angles, he said. They'll have combat drones and high-clearance assassins. This isn't an arrest anymore. They're coming to wipe the place clean. Kyalitha's heart raced. We won't make it back to the ship in time. No, Riker said. But they don't know about the other exit. He tapped the wall 3 times in a strange pattern. A part of the tunnel slid open, revealing a hidden path covered in frost. As they entered, Kyalitha could feel the temperature drop even lower. The path was old, ancient even. The air smelled of dust, time, and something else. Something wrong. Where does this lead? She asked. Riker gave her a look that wasn't just serious, it was haunted. To the original core of the research site, the true lab. She stopped walking for a second. I thought we were just in the lab. That was a decoy, a place for data storage. But this, he pointed into the tunnel. This is where they did the real work. Kylitha hesitated, then followed him again. The deeper they went, the more her senses tingled. The very air around them felt heavy, almost aware, as if the walls had memories of their own. Finally, they arrived. The hallway opened into a large chamber. Circular, perfectly preserved, untouched by time. Strange pods lined the walls, half covered in frost. Some were cracked open, others still sealed. Inside one she saw a figure, long dead, skeletal, with tubes still piercing its chest. A terminal sat at the center, surrounded by a faded red warning symbol in old Federation script. Genetic zone, no entry without Class Sigma clearance. Riker activated the terminal. The screen buzzed to life and a low female voice began to speak. Project Echo Stage 3 Summary. Ravel 9 Core Facility. Subject development entered critical phase. 12 viable candidates implanted with generational memory patterns. 1. Subject showed instability. The others, terminated. Kylitha's breath caught. Terminated. She stared at the pods again. Suddenly the cold felt unbearable. I was one of them, she whispered. One of the 12. Riker nodded slowly. And the only one who lived. Why? She asked. Why was I spared? He looked her in the eye. Because you weren't like the others. You didn't break. You adapted. The programming didn't erase your will. It made it stronger. That scared them. The data on the screen continued to scroll. Medical files, reports, signed documents, and one word kept appearing beside subject. So was her number. Anomaly. Kylitha stepped closer to the pod beside her. It was empty, but a small nameplate was scratched into the side. A number. Then a name, faded but still visible. Irian 07. Her hands trembled. That name. She had heard it once as a child, in a forgotten dream. A voice had called her by that name. She'd dismissed it back then, but now she knew it was her true name. Buried, replaced. They had tried to rewrite her, but the truth had waited, hidden like ice beneath the snow. Suddenly the room shook. An explosion echoed from above. The Federation troops had breached the outer bunker. They were getting closer. Riker turned to her. We can't let them have this place. I'm setting charges. No, Kylitha said, stepping toward the terminal. We're not destroying this. We're copying it. He paused. If we take the files, they'll track us. These systems are hardwired with trace protocols. Then we hide it, she said, voice stronger now. You said I'm the key. Then I'll carry the truth. She slotted the data crystal into the terminal. Lights blinked rapidly as gigabytes of forbidden history flooded into the tiny device. Behind her, Riker set the charges around the room. You have 5 minutes, he said. After that, this place becomes dust. As the transfer completed, Kylitha looked once more at the empty pods, the forgotten children, the lies told in the name of control. I won't forget you, she whispered. They turned and ran. As they escaped through the lower shaft, the facility behind them exploded in a flash of fire and collapsing stone. The snow above cracked and caved in, burying the remains of Project Echo beneath layers of ice once again. But this time, someone survived, and she carried the truth in her hands. The choice that split the galaxy. The storm outside had settled into a quiet fall of ash-like snow, but the silence was deceiving. Deep above the atmosphere of Ravel 9, a warship the size of a city drifted into position, its surface lined with pulse turrets and cloaked drones. The Federation had arrived in full. On the icy surface below, Kylitha and Riker crouched behind a jagged ridge of rock, watching dropships descend like silent predators. The dark sky shimmered with sensor-jamming fields. The Federation wasn't just deploying troops this time. They were bringing an execution squad. There would be no arrests, no trials, only erasure. Riker lowered his binoculars and glanced at her. They know the bunker's gone. They'll scan the entire moon. Won't stop until they find you or your body. Kylitha's fingers curled tighter around the small crystal tucked inside her cloak. It was warm again, as if it recognized the danger. Inside it was everything. Names, documents, experiments, and the truth behind Project Echo. Proof that the Federation had used innocent lives as test subjects and tried to overwrite their identities. For control, she had only just begun to accept what she was. Now she had to choose what to do with that knowledge. If I release this data, she said slowly, I will tear the Federation apart. Riker nodded. Yes. And if I don't, she added, they win. They wipe me out, bury the truth, again and continue the cycle. Again he nodded. But this time his eyes didn't leave hers. This choice isn't just about survival. It's about what kind of galaxy we leave behind. You're not just a witness, Kalitha. You're the last voice the others never got. Her breath hitched. She thought of the frozen pods, the lifeless bodies, the lost names. They had been her siblings in a way, not by blood but by purpose. Victims of a plan none of them had chosen. She had survived. And now, she could give their deaths meaning. She looked up at the stars, barely visible through the smoke. Somewhere out there, countless worlds believed in the Federation's lie of peace, order, justice. She had believed it too, until now. Kalitha drew in a sharp breath. Then let the truth speak. They made it back to Riker's stealth cruiser under heavy fire. Federation dropships scoured the canyons, scanning every rock, every heat signature. One of the drones nearly spotted them, but Riker disabled it with a hand-thrown EMP blade, his movements precise and silent like death. Once aboard, the crew moved quickly. There were only two others, silent operators whose names were never spoken. Riker slid into the pilot chair, eyes scanning glowing screens. Where to? He asked. Kylitha didn't hesitate. Sector 9, the rogue relay station. Riker raised an eyebrow. Pirate territory? Yes, she said. And the only place left that still broadcasts on neutral channels. The Federation can't block it. He grinned faintly. You really have changed. The ship lifted off, its thrusters low and shielded. As they climbed through the atmosphere, Federation ships fired in every direction. One beam sliced past the hull, nearly tearing through the wing. Alarms blared, but the ship held firm. Riker flew like a ghost, slipping past fire, weaving between battle cruisers and vanishing into hyperspace just as the enemy locked on. They reached the rogue station in less than an hour. It wasn't much, just a hollow asteroid patched with metal and wrapped in stolen tech. But it had a relay strong enough to broadcast a signal across 50 systems. That was all they needed. Inside the broadcast room, Kalitha stood before the camera. Her hands were steady, but her heart pounded like war drums. The data crystal sat in the terminal beside her, connected to the core. A green light blinked. Live feed ready. Riker stood behind her, arms folded. Once it starts, there's no going back. She nodded. I know. The technician, a gray-skinned alien with cybernetic eyes, counted down. 3, 2, 1. You're live. Kylitha looked into the lens. This message is for every world under the Galactic Federation, she said. My name is Kylitha, of Rix. You may know me as a diplomat, a negotiator. But today I speak to you not as a leader, but as the survivor of a lie. She paused. The words burned on her tongue. I was born as part of a secret experiment, one the Federation tried to erase. My memories were stolen, my identity buried. Dozens like me were created, and then destroyed. She tapped the terminal. Screens behind her lit up with proof. Images of the labs, video files, classified logs, names and faces. The truth, unfiltered. They called it Project Echo. They called us subjects. But we were children. We were never supposed to know. And if you're hearing this, it means they tried to kill me to keep it quiet. Across the stars, millions watched. Some in silence, others in horror. This is not a call for war, she said. But it is a call for justice. You deserve to know what was done in your name. The feed ended. Silence filled the room. Then the alarms returned, this time from across the galaxy. On dozens of worlds, protesters flooded city squares. Federation offices were locked down. Ships went dark. Some military divisions refused orders. In one outer system, a Federation general declared independence. The truth had spread. Kalitha stood with trembling hands. The weight of her choice had shifted the very stars. Riker came to her side. You did it. She looked at him. No, we did. Outside the station, unseen in the cold of space, the galaxy began to fracture. But something else was born too. Hope. Hunted by the very stars, the galaxy was no longer quiet. Kalitha's broadcast had spread like a storm through the core systems, echoing across border colonies and fringe outposts alike. The truth moved faster than the Federation could control. No firewall, no black site erasure team, no loyalist media outlet could stop it now. Project Echo was real. The Federation had lied, and the people had seen it with their own eyes. But with truth came consequence. Now Kalitha was no longer just a diplomat, a survivor, or a symbol. She was a target. On every channel, her face was declared dangerous, wanted, hunted. Her bounty, dead or alive, reached numbers usually reserved for warlords and mass murderers. Entire sectors were locked down. Planets were placed under martial law. Riker and his crew had become ghosts, weaving through space while the full force of the Galactic Federation bled stars trying to catch them. Kalitha sat in the shadowy cockpit of their stealth cruiser, staring out at the black void beyond. The window. She could still see the red glow of Ravel 9's shattered moon in her dreams. She had been running ever since, but she was done hiding. You okay? Riker asked softly behind her. She didn't turn. They're calling me the destroyer of unity. They always do that to the ones who threaten their illusion of peace, Riker replied. Doesn't mean they're right. She finally looked at him. His eyes were tired, not physically but spiritually. He had lived too many lives in silence, too many buried missions. She wondered how many truths he had seen fall into darkness before this. I didn't want war, she said. I only wanted to live free, to speak what was real. And now the Federation is bleeding from the inside, he said with a hint of pride. You lit a fire they can't put out. But pride couldn't shield them. Riker's crew, what remained of it, had taken heavy losses. One of his operatives had disappeared on a station above Teldris Prime. Another had been vaporized by an orbital cannon during a false meeting on Araxis. They were being cornered, system by system. And time was running out. They arrived at a hidden safe zone deep in the asteroid belts of the abandoned Aryan cluster. There, a small resistance group waited. Outcasts, rogue captains, exiled scientists, and even a few disillusioned Federation officers who had defected after seeing the truth. Kalitha stepped into the meeting hall where a rough circle of species sat in silence. A Cernic war priest, a former Helian security commander, 2 human engineers from Mars, a drone AI running on a damaged processor. All eyes turned to her. She was the reason they had hope. She was also the reason their worlds were now targets. Voice broke the silence. You led us here, Kalitha, said the Helian commander. Now tell us where we go. She stood tall, the weight of 1,000 eyes pressing down on her. We form something new, she said. The Federation was built on fear, on hidden experiments, on enforced silence. We build a network that's louder than their lies. And what if they come for us? Asked the priest. What if they send fleets? Then we show them, she said. that the truth can defend itself. The room erupted into murmurs, some of concern, others of agreement. Later that night, Kalitha stood alone in her chamber, staring at the stolen star charts they had retrieved from a former Federation archive. One red zone caught her eye: Aurelian Void, a system marked restricted even before the Federation was born. Riker entered the room without knocking. "You're looking at the Void?" Kalitha nodded. "They marked it off-limits centuries. Ego. No explanation, no travel, no records." "There's a reason," Riker said, his voice low. "It's not empty. There's something there they fear even more than us." "What is it?" she asked. "A weapon. Or a memory," he replied. "Something left behind before the Federation rose. I don't know, but I think it's where the real war began." She turned toward him, her expression sharpened by firelight. "Then we go there," she said. Riker hesitated. "It could be a trap." "It probably is," she said. "But we can't fight with broken pieces. We need the full story. All of it." He gave her a nod. "We'll set course at dawn." But dawn never came. Just hours before departure, a traitor within the Resistance triggered a beacon, an old Federation code hidden in a cargo drone. Within minutes, the cruiser was surrounded. Battle erupted in the asteroids. Lasers lit up the darkness like a storm of fireflies. Ships exploded in bursts of white flame. The AI drone was destroyed. The Martian engineers sacrificed themselves to block an incoming missile. Riker and Kalitha fled through debris, shielding the data core with their own bodies. As they reached the emergency shuttle, Kalitha looked back at the burning fragments of the Resistance base. Her people, gone in seconds. She climbed into the pilot seat, eyes burning with tears. "We were hunted like animals," she said. "And for what? Because I told the truth?" Riker placed a hand on her shoulder. "No, because the truth survived." She lifted the shuttle away from the dying asteroid field, navigating through wreckage and fire. They were hunted by the very stars now. But somewhere, buried in the silent black of the Aurelian Void, the last piece of the story waited, and Kalitha swore by the memory of the dead she would find it. Judgment from the edge of Earth, the stars no longer felt like home. Kalitha had crossed burned systems and broken alliances, lost comrades and innocents, and watched the flames of rebellion spread like wild lightning across the galaxy. Yet as her shuttle emerged from hyperspace, she finally saw the place that had always been whispered about. Even in Federation command halls, Earth, the lost cradle of humanity. It hung in space like a blue and white jewel, peaceful and untouched, guarded by a defense net so dense it shimmered like a second atmosphere. Thousands of cloaked drones, silent orbital weapons, and deep-range satellites formed an invisible cage around the planet. No one came here uninvited, not even humans, and yet she had been summoned. A signal had reached her just hours after the massacre in the Aryan cluster. Encrypted, old, and unmistakably real, it bore the same code that Riker had once used when he arrested her. Omega Prime, Judgment Protocol initiated. Present yourself to Earth Command. One witness. One record. Kalitha stood in the docking bay of an ancient human station above Earth. The walls were made of reinforced alloy so strong it had survived 3 wars and a solar flare without repairs. The silence inside the station was unnatural. It was like walking through the bones of a sleeping titan. Riker walked beside her. He had changed. His uniform was torn. His face bore a fresh scar across one cheek. He moved slower, each step heavier. This was not the man who had stormed into the Peace Hall on Zerine 5. This was someone who had bled for the truth. "Are you sure about this?" he asked. Kalitha nodded. "The galaxy watched me speak. Now Earth wants to see if I can prove. And if they judge you unworthy?" She looked out the viewport toward the spinning planet. "Then the Federation wins." They descended into Earth's orbit aboard a sleek command vessel older than the current Federation charter. It bore no colors, no name. Only one symbol remained. On its side, an ancient earth insignia wrapped in barbed laurels, a symbol of justice and of warning. The ship entered the upper atmosphere and hovered above Antarctica. Below them, beneath layers of reinforced ice, lay Earth's most sacred secret, Vault Zero. It wasn't just a bunker, it was a tribunal. It had only opened 3 times in known history, each time to decide the fate of billions. This would be the 4th. Kaelitha stood alone in the central chamber, a cold circular room with a ceiling so high it faded into shadow. Before her were 6 seats. Each was empty, yet not silent. Holograms flickered into place, figures with blurred faces and hidden identities. They were Earth's true council, not politicians, not diplomats. Judges. Behind Kaelitha, 1,000. Screens displayed fragments of what she carried, data from Project Echo, the images of children in test tubes, the erased logs from Ravel 9, and her broadcast. It was all on display. A synthetic voice echoed through the chamber. State your name and purpose. Kaelitha lifted her chin. Kaelitha of Rix, Diplomat, survivor of Project Echo. I am here to speak the truth. There was silence. Then the central judge spoke, voice synthesized and flat. You accuse the Federation of crimes against sentient life, of unauthorized experimentation and genetic manipulation. Are you aware this could destabilize peace across 342 systems? Kaelitha didn't blink. Yes. But peace built on lies is not peace. Another judge leaned forward. And what of your own people? Are they not complicit? The Rixian High Council funded part of Echo. I know, she said, and if I must burn with them to reveal the truth, then so be it. The judges exchanged encrypted glances, data flowing silently between their systems. Then the final judge asked the question she had been waiting for. What do you want, Kaelitha? She closed her eyes and remembered. The silent faces inside, frozen pods, the children who never grew up, the erased memories, the friends she lost, the systems burning, the scream of rebellion, the spark of hope. She opened her eyes. I want to break the illusion, she said. I want the people to choose the kind of future they want, not one programmed for them. I want those who killed in secret to be named. I want the lies to end. The silence that followed was long and heavy. Then the judges spoke as one. Verdict. Accepted. Federation charges upheld. Judgment will be broadcast in 12 hours. Global seals unlocked. Truth permitted. Kaelitha's knees nearly gave out. It was over. The truth was no longer in her hands. It was now history. As she turned to leave, Riker was waiting at the edge of the chamber. Well? He asked. They listened, she said quietly. They believed. He nodded. Then my mission's done. She studied him. What will you do now? Riker looked toward the earth. Disappear. Again. That's what ghosts do. No, she said. That's what tools do. You're more than that now. He gave her the smallest of smiles. In the following hours, Vault Zero's judgment echoed across the stars. It was heard in royal courts and mining camps, in temples and spaceports. The Federation tried to respond, but it was too late. Kaelitha's name became legend. The Federation fractured. Some worlds left peacefully, others rose in revolt. But amid the chaos, a new movement was born, the Concord of Free Worlds, led not by humans alone, but by all species who had once been silenced. And at its heart stood Kaelitha, the girl who was never meant to survive. The subject who was supposed to forget. The voice they could not erase.